Hello and welcome to Don't Feed the Geeks, presented by the Long Island Comic Guys, the masters of the geeky verse, for a special edition of Book Club. What do we think?
I like.
I'm TT, by the way, if you don't already know.
Are you? I couldn't tell with the glasses there.
Joined as always by JJ?
Yeah, sure. Yep. Hey, what's up?
And TC.
No, you mean T.
No, that's Toy Story.
You are so.
I don't even know I'm here anymore because of the glasses. I'm incognito. Incognito. Is that the word? No, it's incognito.
Incognito. That's it.
We're not even 2 seconds in this. It's gone to hell.
Well, that was the plan because I don't even know what we're talking about today.
What are we talking about today, guys?
We're doing a book club edition. Yeah, it's been a while. I think almost like a year, right? Since we've done a book club.
Something like that.
It's 3 months, 2 months.
2 months, I
We're
think.
supposed to do Ready Player 2.
I think, then we all
talk about it. So
we all collectively decided we hated it. So we didn't want to spend another second even thinking about it.
I think if one of us liked it, we would have done it still. But when all three of us, it's not going to end well.
Yeah. We're trying to be more positive in the new year.
Yeah,
that wouldn't have helped.
Yeah, well, let's get into this book then with positivity, guys. How about that?
I got my dad bod shirt on today.
Nice. I like it.
It's a perfect rendition, man.
Yeah, I know. You know what it is though? I feel like I don't like the ice cream like that though.
That's ice cream. That's funny.
If that was pizza, it'd be perfect. All right, Toy Story. Why don't you tell everybody what
we are talking about Daredevil Born Again by Frank Miller and David Mazzuccheli. I think it's a hard C like that, like the Italian.
Mazzuccheli. It's not David Mazzuccheli. Hey, I'm Italian. It's okay for me to do that.
It's me too.
I'm happy to do that.
So Daredevil Born Again, 1980.
I don't think we told anybody we were reading this.
No, I don't think we did. It's okay. Surprise drop.
Yeah, it's a surprise book club.
Yeah.
Surprise. So if you haven't read it and you don't want to be spoiled,
don't watch it.
Go ahead and read it.
Yeah, but you're about 35 years too late with the spoilers. So.
What issues does this cover?
So this is released in 1986, Marvel, obviously, with Frank Miller and David Mazzuccheli. Daredevil 226 to 233. It's about 7 or 8 issues. I can't count, but yeah. So this book, the main story takes place between 227 and 231 with a little prologue and epilogue at the end. That's always been included with the collected edition, so they just consider that whole thing the Born Again story.
You know what I just realized?
What?
I don't think my headset's working.
Well, continue.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Oh, keep going. Let's go. He'll figure this out.
All right. So while TC sorts out his technical difficulties, he could probably hear us, but he's just not saying anything. So yeah, Daredevil Born Again. So this was part of the main Daredevil series, 1986, Frank Miller. It's a story of Daredevil's descent into insanity and destitution at the hands of the kingpin of crime himself, and as well as his struggle to rebuild a new life for himself after Kingpin just beat him down. Like crazy. Can you hear us now?
No, just keep going. I'm gonna fix it.
Cool. So Frank Miller, obviously known for Dark Knight Returns, Sin City. He's people love him. People, I don't know if people hate him, but he's definitely
he's got a unique.
He does. He's definitely one of
style.
The biggest names in comics, and a lot of the reason a lot of books are here today are because of stuff he wrote. So this one being one of them. I think it's considered one of the not only best Daredevil stories, but one of the best, Marvel stories of all time. So,
wow,
little backstory. So Frank Miller actually wrote Daredevil a little bit in the hundreds earlier on. So the book was like on the brink of cancellation by Marvel because it wasn't doing well, and they brought him on board, and he brought it up to like the top seller list just in a couple issues. So he already had history with Daredevil, and they brought him on to do this storyline. In the mid 200s. So yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, a little backstory.
So because he started out, so this is working again now, right?
You sound better too.
Yeah, because before I was using the it was picking up the camera audio. So I was going like this and it wasn't doing anything. He started his original run around like that Elektra series, right? That was like in the 160s.
Yep.
Or something like that.
Exactly.
He started. It was shortly before that he started, because I know Elektra was like one of the earliest books.
Yeah,
right?
he did it sporadically in the hundreds.
Yeah.
I think. I don't know if he did like a straight run, but that Elektra was definitely part of it.
So I was only half listening to everything. Did we give our thoughts on Frank Miller?
I really like him. I haven't read Sin City. I haven't read a lot of other stuff he's done, but I've read Dark Knight Returns a million times. I love that book. I don't know what you guys have read by him.
I've read a couple of things, and he's definitely got a unique style to it.
Dark, dreary,
I think some of it is a hit and miss. Some of it's really, really, really good. I
like his
it.
good stuff is way good, and his bad stuff is
it's like way bad.
So I actually think that he worked really well like during this time, like in the 80s and like late 70s, because he has like a very gritty type of storytelling. And even like David Mazzucchelli's like art style, like all like everyone's art style in the 80s had that very gritty, like, art style, like, everything was kind of like dirty, and I mean probably intentionally so, because that's what New York looked like in the 70s and 80s. But it's like I feel like he's like almost like a one-trick pony, where it's always like crime and like, mobs and gangsters and stuff like that. Like it's always like kind of like the same thing with him. And I think he like once he got into the 90s and like further, he just kind of got like aged out. I feel like people were like less and less interested in that.
Didn't really know what else to do.
Yeah, like even like he probably did a Punisher run too, right? And it's just kind of like the same thing.
And you can't really go back with stuff like, so when you're drawing, when you're drawing in the 80s, you're drawing that environment that's in that time period.
Yeah.
And then as you're progressing, getting older, and then, the scene changes. I mean, New York has changed dramatically from the 70s, 80s, 90s to now. Well, like now it's going back.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
But when you read them, they're very much like that. Like it's a representation of the time.
Right.
And even like Hell's Kitchen, which Daredevil stationed in, is like Hell's Kitchen's like like a super like
trendy
area right now.
Yeah, it's just I mean all of Manhattan.
Hell's Kitchen.
Yeah, all of Manhattan really is. I mean, I started like when my first job was like on like 9th Avenue in the 50s. I worked right by there, and I was just like, oh yeah, isn't this where Daredevil was? I was like, oh, this is Hell's Kitchen. I was like, I thought it was somewhere else.
Yeah,
it's just it's interesting.
Totally. But yeah, this book's very much a product of that time. And you could tell just from the first couple of pages. When
absolutely.
Karen, that's her name, right? Karen Page.
Mm-hmm.
Karen's trading. We'll start out with the premise of the book. Karen Page trades Daredevil's secret identity for a fix of heroin.
I never liked Karen.
But if that is an indication of the time, then I don't know what is.
So
yeah.
I'm going to say, like, this is my first time ever reading Daredevil. I've never read.
Well, that's interesting. I'm interested to see what you think.
Yeah, I've never read a Daredevil before. I saw part of the show, which I'm not going to compare the two because you can't.
They did take, Jim, though. I think they did take a lot of the elements from Frank Miller's stuff into the show, though. So
okay, I didn't know anything about the character. I didn't know how he had his powers. I felt like it's comical because, I know when he first came out, we had Spider-Man. We had all these other superheroes, and it just seems like everybody gets bit by a radioactive bug or gets radioactive thrown in their face, jumps in a vat of radioactive, and they become superheroes. And I did not know that that's what happened. That's what made him blind and everything else. And when I read that for the first time, I'm like, what? Like, I was a little disappointed, actually. I'm going to be honest with you. I was disappointed because...
Oh, like Daredevil's origin?
Yeah, I didn't know what his origin was. I never knew it. I thought he was blind from birth, to be honest with you. I didn't know that.
It's funny because I feel like Stan's always like, we just had to throw new ideas at him, and it's just like, oh, this guy, he got splashed in the face, or this guy got bit by this, or this guy was in an atomic bomb, and they were just like sitting out there like, coming up with like crackpot ideas.
It just feels like the same thing over and over again. Mm-hmm. So again, like I said, I didn't know anything about the characters. Foggy,
So a little backstory for people like you. Well, now, but obviously Matt Murdock and Foggy Nelson, attorneys at law, they had their own law practice. Karen Page was their secretary.
Yeah, I think she started that.
She worked for them, and so obviously I don't know how, I didn't look it up, but their law practice obviously dissipated, and Foggy got a new job, and Matt went off on his own. So that's why they're not really together in this, doing that. Karen got into, the hard stuff.
So my issue with these are always, and Daredevil specifically, the thing that always bothers me is he's just so moody. Like, he's just such a crybaby. I think it was like, and this was part of the problem. Like, he was, being all kind of like whiny about how things were going, and like, oh, I do everything for the city and I suffer for it. I mean, Spider-Man does the same thing a lot too. Like, that's what's it does get annoying. I think, when they're trying to relate, like, they're like everyday superheroes and like how like they have to like function in the real world. He just comes off as like, oh, poor me, I saved everybody and now I can't have a great life. So it's just like, I've always been a little frustrated by that for Daredevil. I know there's Bojo had recommended a storyline. It was later on in the 2000s. I think it started off, I don't remember.
Is it the Bendis run?
It's before that. So he actually started me off with Kevin Smith. So Kevin Smith, Jim, he actually did a pretty decent sized run on Daredevil too.
I knew that.
And that was a good. Some of it was actually a little reminiscent of the stuff that was going on here, because at that point, like, he still knows who Daredevil is. I don't know if that ever changes, if they ever retconned that, because I've never read enough of it.
Who knew?
If the Kingpin still knew. Like, because in those 2000 stories, he still knows that Murdoch's Daredevil, but he won't tell anybody else. Like, he specifically bumps everyone off. If you notice in this, he bumps everyone else off who knows that Murdoch's Daredevil. So it's like a secret, like, he's keeping, and only he can torture him with it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it is interesting. I found that later stuff a little bit more interesting, like the Bendis and the Kevin Smith run.
Bendis one was great. Who did art? Maleev did the art on that, right?
Yeah, I really
like a clean style. It's awesome. I love that book.
So, I guess we should talk about this.
Yeah, we should. Yeah.
so I'm gonna go quick with my synopsis, if I can, like, go from start to finish, if you don't mind. So
yeah, go for it.
This first issue, what was it, 226? We've got this guy, the Gladiator dude. What was his name?
That's right. It was Gladiator.
Gladiator. Okay. I thought
Melvin
that issue.
Potter.
Melvin, right? I felt that issue shouldn't even been part of this. I felt like it when I read it. I'm like, I didn't understand.
You see it later on, but for when you first start, you're like, why is this part of it?
Right. It just, to me, it felt like it was, I didn't need to read it. It didn't matter to me, but I loved it. It was probably my most favorite book out of it for the art.
The first one, really?
I love the art in it. I love the way, the form, like his form, like Daredevil's form, the way he kicked and the way he stretched himself out. I thought that was pretty cool looking.
It was very gymnastic looking.
Right.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
And compared to the other issues, there wasn't really much of that. I mean, that one issue, that there was a lot of it when he was battling the Gladiator dude. But I felt like that didn't need to be in there. Mm-hmm. Next couple issues, Daredevil's got a girlfriend, Gloria?
Yeah.
Gloria, right?
Mm-hmm. Apparently.
Like, was he with her long? I don't know. So, she wanted a little more from him, and he didn't want to, and they end up breaking up, and then she goes in the arms of Foggy. Like, I hate that crap. I don't know. It's a little weird to me. No?
Yeah, I don't even know where they went with that later on, because
idea.
I don't even recall in like later issues like Foggy being with her or being married. Like, I guess that eventually fizzles out. I have no interest in finding out, like reading more and finding out how, though.
And in this little part, in these 7 issues, Foggy's character, it just seemed like he was a numbskull. Like, he didn't fit lawyer type person to me. He didn't. I don't know. He just. Like a doofus. He was like a doofus. He was like more of those ambulance chasing lawyers. And I'm not putting those type of lawyers in a column, in a category, so forgive me. It's weird. It didn't fit his role, it didn't fit his visuals.
So I think from the stuff I've read and seen in Foggy's always supposed to have been like kind of like dopey, but like very book smart, but kind of dopey.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like that's like how they were trying to portray him. Mm-hmm. I do agree with you. It kind of goes a little too far sometimes. It's like, but again, like that's like their attempt at comic relief, I think.
I guess.
Yeah.
And then you got this, the girl,
Karen
Karen Page.
Mhm.
Where was she? She was in what, South America?
Yeah.
What the hell was she doing that? Like, I know she had to get away. Then she came back with some guy and she gave up herself for him.
It's weird because like I had never even heard that she became an actress like at any point. So apparently she becomes an actress and then like she's making okay movies and they get bad. Then she gets addicted to drugs and then like she's doing stuff to just keep the drugs coming. I was just like I never heard any of that. I do recall that she was like addicted to drugs at one point. I never knew like there was more of the story than that though.
And in this whole time, the Kingpin knew who Daredevil was, and
because of her.
Because of her,
because they were friends and they were,
I don't know. I'm shocked that girl Gloria didn't know he was Daredevil. Like, why? I mean, if you're a superhero, like, why wouldn't you tell the person you're with? I don't know. I always thought that was always kind of strange. I know you got to keep up your secret identity.
Mary Jane didn't know for a while, right?
Yeah.
When did she find out? Do we know?
The issue probably.
Yeah, Mr. I read every single Amazing Spider-Man.
She probably didn't find out till like the 80s, 90s.
Oh, that early?
Really? What's that? It was probably around like maybe a little before he proposed to her.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the other character, the Nuke.
He was in the epilogue.
No, that wasn't part of the storyline.
Not the main story.
Because that's where it was all confusing me. Like all of a sudden, this guy shows up that the Kingpin wanted to get, and then you got some Avengers that show up. Like, what was their role in this? Like, why wouldn't the Avenger guys help Matt Murdock take out the Kingpin? It was just it's Tony Stark, and he's in one panel, and he's gone. Where'd you go? Hey.
I've always felt that, especially like the relationship between a lot of the groups, they always like team up for these big events, but there's never any like help. Like the thing that always annoyed me, like from the Avengers relationship with the X-Men, because I'm using the X-Men now, like the Avengers never like call out people for like being like so anti-mutant. They're never like, oh, like these people are good. They never stand like there's a lot of gaps between like the interconnectivity between these guys, unless it's like a huge story like where they're facing down Dr. Doom or whatever his name is, Thanos. They're like, oh, okay, you go do your own thing, even though everyone knows that you're a good guy and you shouldn't be prosecuted. It's just like it's weird. They like to try and keep them in their own storylines, and I feel like a lot of the people who write and draw these, they don't want to get the other characters involved because then they have to line up their stories with the other creators, and it's just.
But sometimes it will fit. Like this just didn't fit with me. Here we got this guy, the Nuke. Like he killed a bunch of people in the middle of the street.
Oh, yeah.
And then Captain America and Iron Man, they're just standing there. Oh, okay, sure, let's take him into custody. I mean, it didn't fit.
I mean, well, they wouldn't have killed him. Like that's not like their MO either, though.
No, but I mean, I think they would go more toward. He
already like Daredevil already took him out at that point. Yeah. I think Daredevil was going to try and kill him, and they kind of like intervened. They're like, "Whoa, easy there, Daredevil. We got it from here."
So at the end of all of this, it turns out the Kingpin, but I don't think the story finished. Like. Now, do I have to read more to figure out, like, the ending?
I think you probably have to read another 20 years worth if you really want to.
The ending panel was Murdoch and the junkie chick, the whore, walking down the street. Call it as it is. I mean, that's what.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I've never liked her. I'll spoil alert for you. If you want, and this is spoiler alert for anyone else who wanted to read Daredevil and doesn't know this yet.
She does, right?
Yeah, she gets killed in like that Smith run by Cross. What's the hell's his name?
Crossbones.
Not Crossbones.
I know.
the Bullseye.
Oh,
yes, and I think that's like early on. And I don't even think like they're together at that point anyway. It's just weird. Like Daredevil is like one of those. Like I liked some of the storyline, but it just gets like he's always like I hate self-destructive superheroes where they're always like causing their own problems until they like decide it's time to fix them. And Daredevil does that all the time. Like he's like one of the worst people who does that.
Yeah.
It's just like just constantly like making things worse, and then like, oh, snaps out of it. Oh, I've got to do better. I mean, even in the show, it was the same thing. It was just like, dude, enough of this crybaby nonsense. You're a superhero. Suck it up. You can't have a great personal life.
Yeah, and I don't understand his powers. I know he's blind. He's got, sixth sense. It just doesn't make
So
sense.
there's a lot of interesting stuff out there, Jim, where like he gets taught by this guy's stick. So that stuff's actually more interesting than anything. Where he like hit how he gets to the point where he's Daredevil. There's a couple of things that I've read on that, which is interesting. So he has like whatever the radioactive thing did, it enhances other senses. So he does kind of see. He sees like almost like sonar.
Right. That's
like
what I got.
Yeah. I mean, like even in the Daredevil movie with Ben Affleck, it's actually pretty accurate to like what his powers are. For whatever else like you want to knock it.
I think I've seen it. I think.
Yeah, it's advanced. Like he's like he was trained by like some guy who like trained the hand. So he's like elite martial artist with enhanced powers kind of thing. And like he like uses his senses to his advantage or whatever.
So Matt, what was your favorite areas of the book? Like
anything involving Kingpin. He's one of my. I love Kingpin. Vince D'Onofrio's Kingpin remains one of my favorite on-screen villains of all time.
He was good.
I know he's not like a super-powered supervillain, but I love that portrayal. But even in the comics as a character, like he's huge. He's like unbelievably, fat but strong.
It's almost like he does say like, so he has a huge belly, but like he's supposed to be incredibly strong. Like the rest is like it is a lot.
Like it's just like a tank.
Yeah, I would love for them to like even Vincent D'Onofrio. They haven't really found like the human being who could fill like that size. Even the guy in the movie, like Michael Clark Duncan, he was more muscle than like mass that.
Yeah. And Vincent D'Onofrio gained weight for that role too.
Oh,
and it still was like. But any scenes with him I loved. I loved like the monologues where he's standing in front of the window in his office, like, and you just hear his thoughts. And he's like, "There was no body. There was no body." But after the taxi thing.
Yeah.
I feel like the best parts about Daredevil are when like Kingpin are involved.
Yep.
And like you're almost rooting for Kingpin because like Daredevil is such a crybaby, and it's like, I hope this guy just wins at this point. Let Spider-Man take care of him. I don't know at what point, and that's something like I don't know if I haven't read enough of, but he started off mainly as a Spider-Man villain, and then he kind of like shuffled over.
Yeah,
Daredevil,
because he shuffled over to like being the New York crime boss or whatever, and there's so many villains in New York, I guess.
So is it known that he is a crime lord, a crime boss in New York?
Yeah, he has like you saw the cops working for him. Everybody's on his payroll.
And that also. So that begs the question, like, why hasn't the other Avengers come in and try to take this guy out too?
I think the problem is he covers his trail. So there's never any evidence. So in the beginning, when he got introduced in Spider-Man, like he said, like they're all like, oh, there's some kingpin in a crime, but he doesn't like let it on that it's him. Mm-hmm. So even the other criminals kind of don't know who the kingpin is at that time. So he keeps it very mysterious in the beginning. Yeah. But you'll notice
they know he's powerful, but they don't know he's the guy.
Yeah.
Right.
Interesting.
And even in this story, he's actually talks about at one point how he wants to make it completely legitimate. Like he wants to make all the paperwork legitimate. Like they're still going to do illegal stuff, but none of it can be tied to them. Right. I mean, it's the same thing with like actual real life criminals, who are powerful and successful. They just, they never get their hands dirty, and there's nothing tying them to any criminal activity. They just funnel it through legitimate businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting.
It's a lot of work, and you'd have to kill people. There's more negatives than there are positives. Even though I could probably buy an Action 1 if I did it.
Probably.
We'll look into it again later.
TC, did you have a favorite scene in the book?
I probably shouldn't say the one that was the favorite scene. I actually really liked that character Nuke. Like when he was like red pill, blue pill. So my actual favorite scene is probably nothing to do with Daredevil. It's when Captain America in that next scene goes in and like knocks through like that whole like general, and like he sees that like this guy was like the only survivor of a failed like super soldier experiment. And I was like, oh man, I want to know more about this. I actually don't care about the Daredevil storyline.
So do we know more about this character? Because I haven't heard about this character either. This villain.
He's weird. I think he's crossed over with like some X-Men stuff. I think he has like a past with like Wolverine as well. I remember
this is his first appearance though in this story.
Oh, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah, I think he does.
Wolverine Origins. He's in the Death of Wolverine.
Yeah, because Wolverine like whoops him one time.
Yeah, I like the also in one of those issues when Daredevil was with Cap on the roof, and Daredevil's like, "Why do you care about this?" And he runs away, and then Cap's like, "Because he wears the flag."
Yeah. Honest. Yeah.
I like that.
It wasn't more like why. I think he was saying it because he was like almost disrespecting the flag. Like he did that.
That's what I mean. Why
you? Yeah. Well, sorry.
Because Cap wears the flag, and to see this guy, this terrorist guy wear the flag also.
100%.
Huh.
Yeah. Other scenes, the taxi cab thing at the bottom of the lake.
Yeah, that was kind of cool. Probably the river.
Yeah.
So you can get your first appearance of the Nuke for $145 on eBay at a 9.8.
That's funny.
And he probably should buy it because he'll probably be in a movie soon too.
Yeah. Right.
So what did you guys think of like we kind of talked about the story already. How do you guys feel about the art?
Well, one thing about the story, JJ, I liked it. I really like this book, but I see what you're saying. It doesn't feel like it flows very well from beginning to end, I would say.
Yeah.
There's a lot of I really like the moments in this book, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like the Kingpin, like certain things with Daredevil, like the thing with Cap, but as a beginning to end story, I feel like it's very, doesn't flow too well.
Absolutely. And that's, I hate repetitiveness. So, one of the things, I must have learned it 5 or 6 times in this, that, how Daredevil got his powers. Like, I got it.
They beat on that a little too much.
A little too much.
Definitely don't read all of Daredevil then if you don't like it. But he just does stuff to himself over and over again.
And the same thing with the reporter. I'm blah blah blah. I'm a reporter, and we must have read that 5 or 6 times. And I get it. Maybe because if you miss an issue, you can pick up on who this character is. And again, I liked the reporter dude.
Ben Eric's great.
I liked his segments. There's some in there the stuff that was
when he's on the phone with the guy in the hospital as he's getting
that was a great scene.
And you got the people in the background yelling at him to get off the phone. Like I think that stuff is genius. But again, it's the moments, not the flow of the story.
Right. And him going to his apartment, his wife's hanging from, that was pretty cool, but it just, again, that stuff was interwoven with everything else. And you kind of like, where's this, like, what's going on? It just, the flow was just so off on it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you guys. There were better moments than there were like a complete story. Mm-hmm. It does get choppy, and I think it's hard, comic books too.
Especially back then when it's just issues,
Yeah,
like even then, I don't think it was
how
so
are they
common.
going back and forth too? They probably
it probably wasn't so common then either to do like long story arcs. Still, I know they did a lot of them, I'm sure, but they still did those individual issues.
Yeah,
and this had a lot of dialogue. I know
his always does. Yeah.
A lot of dialogue. I get it. There was a lot of dialogue back in that time with other books, but it was a lot of dialogue to go along with the randomness.
I'll have to say that I totally agree. I definitely think that Ben Urich was the best character in this.
Yeah.
He was probably the one that I found most interesting were his scenes, because he was like in such like a bind every time. Like, he wants to do the right thing, but he's like getting death threats left and right. Like he literally sees that like massive, like almost like she almost looked like, I thought they were going to say that nurse was like Kingpin's sister or something. And she was like almost as massive as him. And she like beats like that cop to death.
It was cool. Definitely cool.
Yeah. So what do you guys think of away from the story, the writing and the art? Like the actual, like Frank Miller's actual writing, like how he paints his scenes, his dialogue, all that stuff.
I liked it. I don't know a lot of Frank Miller books. I've read part of the the Superman, what is it, the Batman one,
Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah. If I've read anything else, I probably don't know what I've read. I'm not a Marvel guy, so
He does he really tries to do almost like a screenplay. It feels like for everything, like because if you think about it, like he's describing kind of the scene in every kind of panel. You know, he's doing like the inner monologue that, in like kind of every panel too. I do like, and this is a credit, especially back then, how they do a really good job of differentiating like who's talking when. Like I felt like I never got confused. There was always like a different box and a different font, and it's just like, all right, I know that this person's talking, which I really enjoy because there's a lot of stories that don't do that well. Where you're like, I don't even know like which character's talking. I felt like V for Vendetta. I had that issue so much with like trying to figure out like which box is for which person, and like this was done really well. I mean, I think he's a really good writer, and like for stuff like this is totally his wheelhouse. And I think he did a good job of writing the story. Again, like there's some like, continuity and like, it's hard to fit so much in one story. But I thought it was good. I think, this is really, where he shines the brightest, kind of like these storylines. It definitely, I would say, like I did like the Elektra stuff, like that story. I've read a few of those, and I felt like I did like that storyline a little bit better because it kind of gets away from like this, like, gangsters and stuff like that. And there was a little bit more of like, I guess it was like Asian gangsters more with like the hand and stuff like that. I kind of find that stuff a little bit more interesting than, street level stuff. But the Kingpin's always good. And I think he writes the Kingpin really well. And that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, no, I like, cause you know me, I like the what's the word that I use?
I tried to, what's it?
The exposition.
Yeah, exposition. I was trying to.
I like wordy stuff if it's good. If it's crap, I skip over. But like you said, I liked all the Kingpin monologues. I like even when he's complaining, Matt Murdock. I liked those, his thought bubbles through that as he's going through when he runs into the Santas on the street. Yeah.
I felt like the first few issues were a little tougher with the dialogue. Yes. Some of those earlier ones, I felt like they were just like saying stuff to say it a little bit.
Yeah, totally.
Cool.
Yeah. How about the art?
I like the art. It was good. It was good. For back then, I liked it. Most of it was good.
I'm trying to think of like I've definitely seen other pieces of Mazzuccheli art. I do really like his stuff. And like for something like this, it works really well. And like JJ was saying, even especially in a lot of those scenes where he's doing like a lot of acrobatic stuff, he really drew that well, like the extensions and like the kick swings to like the face when he was fighting. Yeah, his action scenes were really good, I thought. I mean, his regular scenes were good too. Yeah. I'm like, because I'm like almost a product of this era, I do have a soft spot for this like late 80s kind of artwork where it's like you can tell it's still like pencils and inks and like traditional colors. Like this is really before they start like computers got involved at all, which is like it has like a different type of feel. And like this is a book where I would almost like want to have like the comic in hand and like smell the pages a little bit. But I've always enjoyed this kind of style and this era. Like 70s and 80s are probably my favorite eras for artwork. And
me too. I liked his Kingpin. Some random things jumped out at me that I didn't like, and they were like whenever Karen was on the panel, her face always looked so weird to me.
Well, that's because she was supposed to look like a crackhead.
Yeah, right, but I just wasn't a fan of that. Some things rubbed me the wrong way. I don't know.
I know exactly what you're saying because I thought the same exact thing.
Yeah,
a lot of purples in there, right? It was almost like she was bruised more than anything. Yeah.
I love the scene. There was a page where it was the jail scene, and the reporter dude, picks up the gun. He starts hammering the guy's head.
Yeah,
and there's blood coming off, of the gun. And I mean, visually, it was beautiful. I mean, you can't complain about that.
Totally.
Another great Ben Urich scene too.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah. It's good stuff.
I know. So what happened to the Kingpin after that? Do we know? Like after that blog.
And that's what's bothering me. So he still knows it's Matt Murdock, right? Yeah. So what happens now? It ended with Matt and that chick walking down the street. Like
the best piece of advice I can give you is just give Bojo a call and he'll tell you.
This thing will be twice as long.
Yeah, I'll probably. I may read the next couple issues just to see what that.
You should check out the other Daredevil stuff. You might like it, like the later stuff in the 2000s.
Yeah, some of that was actually really good, and so there was another mystery that they hung in front of you, and I'll spoil this one too. So the nun Maggie, when he she comes to visit, she's the one who comes to visit him in the hospital initially, and then she's the one who kind of like finds him and nurses him back to health as an adult. And he's like, he's like, why did you come to see me when I was a kid? Why are you here now? Are you my mother? And she's like, oh, he's like, that's ridiculous. Whatever. She is his mother.
Oh, she is.
She is his mother. Yeah. You literally don't find that out till like 20 years later, which is crazy. I'm pretty sure like you don't find out before.
Well, I think she made a comment in this that kind of figure it out.
Yeah.
There was like she had
to it.
Yeah. I forgot which one that was, but yeah.
Because there's a lot in that. I don't remember if it's the Bendis or the Smith run, but in that run is actually when she confirms that she is. Okay. I mean, he assumes she is too at this point. I don't think they ever both officially agree on it until then though.
Interesting.
So what do you guys think on the ending? About the ending? Do you think it tied everything together?
No.
If we're talking about without the epilogue, absolutely not. With the epilogue,
what was the epilogue? The very last issue when
the last two
just goes crazy?
No, the last two, because I think at the end of the main Born Again was when Daredevil rescued Karen and everything, and that was all good. But then he still had to prove that Kingpin was trying to frame him. Which were those last two issues where Kingpin was trying to still kill Matt, and that's where he got Nuke.
Yeah, but everything wasn't kind of all good before that, though.
Not all good. No, far from all.
He just saves Karen. That was the only thing.
That's it. So that's why I'd say absolutely not if it wasn't for the epilogue.
So I guess I probably should have brought this up earlier. I just don't get the whole Born Again thing.
What does it mean?
What? Oh, he's like, oh. It's just so that kind of didn't make sense to me. I get what they were trying to do, where it's just I'm shedding this part of myself, and I'm just gonna, he realizes that he is needed. I was just I didn't really get any of that. It didn't seem like a reborn kind of situation.
It was much less so.
Yeah,
there was a lot of I noticed a lot of Catholic imagery too, with the nun and everything in the stained glass windows.
Oh, that's huge in this.
Yeah,
he's a very big Catholic.
Yeah.
Daredevil. Yeah, Matt Murder. His father too.
So at the end of this, did he get his law license back?
I mean, we assume he definitely does because he practices law in the future.
This is what didn't wrap itself up. I mean, all this stuff was taken away from him in the very beginning, but when you're at the very end of this, all he gets back is a whore. I mean, really.
Oh boy.
I mean, where's Foggy? There was no Foggy at the end of this. There's no his cheating girlfriend was. There's none of that.
So with stuff like this, you don't really get a resolution to that kind of stuff. That's for later issue. This is mainly just he takes down the big bad. He gets Kingpin. I think to this day he never gets caught. Kingpin has, I think, maybe been in jail a few times.
Yeah,
but he always comes back.
In the show, he was in jail, but he comes out of it.
Yeah, he goes back to power.
But I figured if you're writing a story like this, where it's it's a segment, over a few issues, you should wrap up some of the things that I'm not saying wrap it all up. Hey, all right, so he knows he's Matt Murdock. Okay, let's move on. But what about the other stuff? I mean, his house got blown up; it was all gone. Where's he living?
Mm-hmm. And they don't even specify where him and Karen are at that point. When they wake up together and he's helping her out, it's where is he? Is he in the the church, in the attic somewhere?
Yeah, that's why I'm saying it was a little quirky. It just
it's just that's smaller stuff. They're gonna do a whole series. They'll probably do 3 or 4 issues in a row on how he gets his law degree back, and they're gonna build up those stories. I feel the thing that you definitely notice about reading these books in the 67. I mean, even probably true to some point today. I think today they like to wrap up storylines more than back then. I mean, for the X-Men, there were some storylines that don't get wrapped up for like 20 or 30 years.
Claremont's entire run is never wrapped up.
He never wraps up anything. So like this is actually a pretty common thing where like everything gets like dangled in front of you. I mean, to this day, they've never touched upon the fact that some random lady took the like, I don't even remember if it was one baby or twins away from like Mary Jane Watson, who like had a baby. Like the baby died. They tell them the baby died, and then they bring the baby away. Never speak of the pregnancy again. Like that's like an open storyline that never got addressed. And to this day, and that probably came out in like 1988 or 1990, and maybe in 2025 they'll touch on it again. But it's, you know, they dangle stuff, and sometimes they never resolve it.
Yeah.
I haven't read enough of that stuff, like that era, to know. Like anything I've read from that era, has been, you know, these kind of things, like small stories. I
mean, some of the runs are really worth reading. I mean,
I know you read every X-Men ever up until a point.
No, not yet. I mean, the 70s and 80s X-Men is really good. Like that stuff's fantastic. Claremont's run is a must read. I mean, I'll tell you other stuff that I would avoid from there, but yeah, like I guess I didn't really give an answer on the ending. Probably everyone else did. I thought it was okay. Like there are things that didn't get wrapped up that I don't really even care about. Like I would love to hear more about Kingpin down the road, but like I probably read some of it. It's I don't like Karen Page. I know she dies, so that's awesome. Wow. And then Froggy, like that would be something I would.
He's my least favorite character in this, I think.
Who, Froggy?
Yeah, I think so.
I would literally just love someone to tell me like what happens with him and that chick. I'm just curious.
Yeah,
like that's literally. I was like, do they like get married? Does she die at some point? I'm assuming she did. Like she almost died 5 times. She became a photographer for like one day and almost died like 16 times with Ben.
Yeah.
Like in the prison, she almost dies. Like, and then like that nuke guy comes, and she literally almost gets like crushed by a boulder because she's trying to get some like photo. I was just like, wow. I was like, first of all, that's Peter Parker's job. All right, you're gonna take his shots.
Where was he during this whole thing?
Hey, he's another crybaby too. I mean, I love the Spider-Man stuff, but he was probably whining about something until he decides to fix it at the end.
I thought it was funny that they brought up even the Bugle, like the Daily Bugle was brought up.
The Bugle's a big thing because Ben Urich is actually a huge character in Daredevil, and he's like, and you almost never see him in Spider-Man. Like you see him like occasionally, but he's like a pure, like he's a Daredevil guy. He's on the Daredevil.
Yeah, I only know him from Daredevil. Really,
he actually knows that. Like I don't remember what issue he finds out Matt's Daredevil, but like he knows that he's Daredevil for a while. I think he might actually.
I got that. They never explicitly said that, but I got that.
Yeah, I think he actually figured it out on his own too, like one of those. Mm-hmm. I actually loved the guy. I forgot what his name was. The guy who plays him in the Netflix show. I loved him, and I hate that they like killed him off so they could eventually like have Karen take that role because he was so good. I was like, don't kill him off. But it was the ending was it's like, you know. Mm-hmm. I guess we should probably get into this into the grades because that'll probably give a better idea of how I felt about the book overall.
Yeah. Who wants to go first? You never go first because you're middle, so in the middle of our ages. So how about you go first?
All right. So you want to do it in? We'll go clockwise here. I'll say 7-0. Like there were things I liked about it. I think it was a good story overall. I think again, there's a lot of holes in there. Like I don't think it deserves anything less than that, at least in my opinion. I probably wouldn't read it again. Mm-hmm. But I think 7-0. I think it was something that people should read if they're especially if they're Daredevil fans.
JJ, or you want me to go first?
I'm gonna go. I'm going with the 6-0 on this. I think it's. To me, it didn't flow right. I will not be reading this again. I can guarantee you there. I kind of want to read more Daredevil, but then I don't want to read more Daredevil because, again, like you said in the very beginning, like he's a whiny little.
It's a lot of the same stuff with him. It's just like, and I feel like it doesn't get that interesting. At least Spider-Man, like he does different things and he gets into like different situations. Like Daredevil stays very street level. He doesn't like, it's like the Hand and Kingpin, Kingpin. Like it's one or the other with him. I feel.
I just feel like and now that you said that, like I feel like he's just a waste of a character. Like I could do without him. To be honest with you, it's not my favorite character.
Mojo would be so upset. He loves Daredevil.
Listen, it's just not for me.
I also like Daredevil. I mean, in general, I like him. I didn't love him in this book at all. But
it's not a book I would ever buy. I will never buy a Daredevil book just to have. I mean, I don't own one now. I don't think I do.
Yeah, I don't love the character. I love the design. I like how he looks.
I like the character. I don't like him in this story.
So how much Daredevil have you read, Toy Story?
I've read I didn't read the Smith run. I read the whole Bendis run, and I read the Mark Waid run from Marvel Now, which was excellent.
I did read a decent amount of the.
That was excellent. Yeah, I like that.
But you've read a lot of it, don't you agree? Like this is like it's just he kind of just does this over and over again.
Yeah, this is the worst though, kind of it. I think.
Yeah,
like I definitely enjoyed all the other Daredevil I read much more than this.
So give us your grade on this one.
I'm going 7.0, but CBCS where they put the little check mark to say it's a little bit nicer than that.
I like that.
So is it? It's what do they call that? It's like certified or something like that.
Certified, right?
No, it's I don't remember. I got to look this up now.
Yeah.
They put a little check mark.
7.0, but it looks like an 8.5.
It's better than it looks.
So why don't you explain what you mean by that a little bit, though?
Because like I said, I think that there are genius moments in this, like 1 and 2 page spreads of panels that I think are fantastic by themselves.
Okay.
But I don't think the sum of everything together holds up.
The sum of all the parts,
yeah.
So there's a lot of really great parts, but
yeah, like the saying is usually the sum is greater than the parts. I think it's the opposite here. You know what I mean?
I got you.
So would you recommend it to others to read?
I think it's a must read just because of how much it's inspired stories that came after it.
Yeah, I get that.
You know, like there's certain things that I've read that I don't like that I still think people should read. You know. So,
let's say you read this, whether you liked it or not. What should people read next?
If they're into Daredevil,
or maybe not just specifically Daredevil. If they're into Frank Miller.
If you're into Daredevil, I would read the Bendis run. It's long. It's 3 pretty thick volumes, and it's very self-contained. If you're just into Frank Miller, you got to read Dark Knight Returns. That's a must-read.
Have any of you guys read the Sin City stuff?
No, I haven't.
I've only seen the movies, and they're fantastic.
Yeah. I think Sin City's really good. The books. I've been meaning to for a while, actually.
And that's like kind of like the movies where it's like almost all black and white except for certain things, right?
Yeah. I see Frank Miller in kind of not not the same exact thing, but in that group of like Alan Moore type writers.
Yeah.
He's not like really dark and like heavy.
He's the same thing as them. Like you're never gonna see him like really do like change up his style or do something like out of his wheelhouse.
That's their style. They're good at it, and they stick to that.
I might even go as far as like using the O word on him. I do think he is a little overrated.
Frank Miller?
Personal opinion. Yeah, I think. Listen, there is some stuff that I really enjoy. Even that Dark Knight Returns stuff.
Did you read it?
Oh yeah, I've read all of them. What is it? It's 3 different ones, right? It's 1, 2, and 3.
I've never read the other ones. I just read the first one.
Wait, which ones haven't you read?
It Strikes Again, and the third one, The Master Race.
Oh yeah, no, I've read all. I read all 3. The second 2 are terrible, but even like, I meant like the stories contained within. I felt like 1 and 2 are good.
Oh, even Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah. And then it's the same thing with like Batman in those, where he's just like it's he's very self-deprecating superhero kind of thing. Like all his characters are very self-deprecating.
Oh duh. Batman Year One is by the same creative team.
I actually like that much better. That's probably my favorite stuff out of all of the things.
Same artist too, Mazzuccheli.
Yeah.
But if you want a different writer in the same vein, I'd read Saga of the Swamp Thing by Alan Moore. Because it's still superhero-y in that it's a DC character, but it's still got that same dark vibe to it.
You've been pushing that for a while.
I have. I'm not going to make you guys read it, though. I don't think you'll like it.
I tried.
You did?
Let me ask you something. So is there a standalone series or a book with just the Kingpin?
That I don't know.
I think he had a mini run, Jim.
I like that character. Again, yeah, I agree with you guys. I like that character, and I would probably read a book with just him and on his side of the spectrum.
Didn't he have a recent title? I think it was like maybe like the last few years he might have had a title of his own. It didn't last very long. The problem is like he's only as good as like who he's going up against. So like that's why like I think Daredevil,
in a lot of Daredevil stories, I'm looking
like
it up.
you know why people like Daredevil is because like you have a great villain. I mean, you know, the same thing with like Spider-Man and Batman. Like, you know, it's you only a really great story if you have like a great adversary.
Yeah, well, looks like 2003 he had his Kingpin series. I don't know how many issues this was, but it looks. Yeah.
So on this top 10 list that I just pulled up of the top 10 Kingpin stories, it's entirely Daredevil and Spider-Man stories. So
which Spider-Man ones are there?
So in the clutches of the Kingpin, which is his first appearance, 50 to 52.
Yeah.
There's Spider-Man Tangled Web. Have you heard of that?
That's probably something separate. I don't think I've read that.
Yeah, it is. It's not the main series. Punisher Max 1 to 5. He's in there.
Oh, that was really good, Jim. I would definitely read that.
That was good. I haven't read it.
Punisher Max 1 to 4.
What year was that? What year was that?
That was like 2000, 2004 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see it in front of you?
No, I don't see it.
Not recent, right?
I don't know if that's on Marvel Unlimited either for some weird reason.
They don't put the Max stuff on there, really, right?
There's only a few of them. I think because it's like a little extra graphic.
Yeah.
That's another one Bojo's always talking about. That one was good though. I did read that one.
I've actually read a lot of Punisher Max, but newer stuff within the last 5 years.
Yeah. So what else? What else were some of the Daredevil ones?
Like on that list.
Yeah.
Kingpin. Let's see.
Because that 2000s that like Bendis run, like what was that called? Did they have like a name of that run?
I don't think Kingpin was on that.
He was in something because I do remember that later thing. There's a confrontation between him and Daredevil. That was like my favorite Daredevil run. There was one in the later, like the early to mid 2000s that was really good. A Daredevil story with Kingpin. That was probably one of my favorite ones. I don't remember what it was called though.
So there's a story called Gang War, which is 170 to 172.
That's like around the time, like right after the time of Elektra.
Frank Miller and Klaus Janson, who also did Dark Knight Returns. So that was in Miller's earlier Daredevils.
I did like that part better. For sure.
Ultimate Spider-Man 8 to 12. There's a Kingpin story. Did you read any of that stuff?
No, it's on my list, but I haven't got to it yet.
I read a little bit of it. It's very weird, but it's kind of cool.
All right, so listen, if you read this book and you liked it, definitely keep reading more Daredevil. Listen,
I don't think what number one on this list is.
What is it?
Born Again.
Is it really?
As the best Kingpin story, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, right. I thought Kingpin was fantastic. Like my favorite parts of this book were the Kingpin scenes.
It's probably what helped. It's probably what helped altogether.
Yeah, when he was, I think they were in the office meeting or something, and the guy suggested, I don't remember what he suggested, but he was like, "Here's a check for your shares in this company. Take it or your family dies." Yeah. I love that.
And then he basically tells him to kill him anyway after that.
Yeah, I love that stuff.
Yeah, he's a very like intimidating character. He's probably actually the most scariest villain in the entirety of Marvel Universe because he probably really exists to some degree.
Yeah. He's probably the most realistic villain.
He is, yeah. Like, because hey, I didn't see no guy flying around in some glider dressed up like a goblin. So I'm more worried about this guy running the world behind closed doors, bumping people off if you cross them. But yeah, that was good stuff. We have to figure out what our next one is. Maybe we'll even announce it on one of our episodes, right?
Maybe,
right? To tell people in advance what to read, so they could do it with us. What haven't we done in a while? So we haven't done DC, right?
Yeah, we haven't done DC in a little bit.
because before this was independent, right? Because V for Vendetta was independent. So if anybody has any ideas, if we don't come up with something, suggest something.
Yeah, let us know.
Maybe we'll do. Let's steer towards a DC book, or if there's like another really good independent that we haven't read, we can try that too. We'll take a break from Marvel.
Yeah, might as well, right?
Yeah, there are a lot of good Marvel stuff out there too, though.
Mm-hmm.
But
Agreed.
yeah,
All right.
that's all I got.
Good stuff.
You guys, you got anything? I think I got a good closer.
All right.
Oh yeah, go for it. Go for it.
All right, guys, keep reading.